I'm the owner and designer of the company. I created it in 2015, and I am a ceramicist first and foremost, and I designed all the products, and they're still made in my studio in Portland, Oregon now. When I started, cannabis was even less legal than it is now, so there was even greater stigma around it. It had just become recreationally legal here in Portland. So when I entered the marketplace, there was very few other options for like designer smokeware. So that's definitely changed over the last several years. Like, there are a lot of other companies that are focusing their branding, marketing, and products on aesthetics. Yeah, goals for the company have always been just kind of keep moving forward. I am entirely self-funded, and that means that I get to steer my business however I see fit. And I don't necessarily have a grand expansion plan, really. I just kind of make what I want to make and service the other companies that I want to work with. It enables me to work with other artists and designers and brands that I want to work with. And I'm not quite sure what the future holds. Again, I'm a ceramicist, so I probably at some point will transition maybe more out of stoneware and back into fine arts.
I went over the website and I was looking at your Geopipe, and I just wanted to get some background behind the Geopipe and how you came up with such an abstract piece.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I started making pipes, I started with kind of the typical spoon pipe form. And then once I did that, I just kind of had the realization that with the process I use called slip casting, there's no reason why my pieces had to be that generic shape. That shape is really to enable glass blowers to make pipes, and I'm not making my pipes out of glass, so I realized that I could make pretty much any shape I wanted within the limitations of my medium. And so then when I set out to design them, I kind of had the design principles of I wanted them to look beautiful, feel great in your hand, and work really well. So those were kind of my three design principles. And I had never seen a geometric pipe before. And so I kind of had my aha moment of wanting to make geometric pipes that were also felt really good in your hand. So actually when you hold the pieces, despite them being angular, all of the angles are actually designed where your hand naturally bends and curves. So it sits really nicely in your hand. And the kind of happy accident of making those forms when I finally was able to smoke out of them was that they all have an incredibly large chamber. And so the way that the smoke is pulled from the bowl to the mouthpiece is less of a straight shot, which is kind of more typical for a spoon pipe. And so they do smoke really well, and they look really cool on your table as just a piece of art in your home that's also functional.
Yeah, especially a difference of colors. It's not all just one color. Mm-hmm. The abstract pieces, it just makes it so much warmer and just something better to look at, I feel, when I look at the product. When you got the idea of your product and your brand, what was your standpoint on the legal system and just the treatment of the legal system, seeing that you have discussed previously how everyone wasn't so open-minded to the cannabis world?
Yeah, I mean, when I first being a kind of cannabis auxiliary brand, I've definitely had my fair share of issues being in the cannabis marketplace, but obviously I'm not dealing with the actual plant at all, so it hasn't been as extreme as people who are working with THC or CBD or something like that. But I've been kicked off of payment processors, and I've had issues with website hosting just for the sale of the products. And obviously when I first started, there was a lot more concern around even shipping these items and the laws on the books that maybe are super old and weren't updated. And I didn't want to obviously get into legal trouble with any of that. But yeah, as things have changed and people are only more increasingly more pro cannabis legalization across the country, like I really haven't had issues lately. It's yeah, I feel like that was way more prevalent at the beginning of the business, and maybe now I've just created systems that work for the business, so I haven't really run into too much backlash. And for the most part, people, even if they don't smoke themselves, they can recognize like the artistry and the design value of the pieces. So a lot of the time, even if somebody's not necessarily a consumer themselves, like they really like the pieces as art pieces too, which is kind of fun to like experience other people who might be not so pro cannabis being pro like designer cannabis products.
How do you feel being a woman within the company, not directly distributing cannabis products, but products that help smoke cannabis?
I definitely have been really lucky being in Portland. There's a really amazing network of women who work in the cannabis industry here that like from the beginning, I started going to like, whether it be like women grow events or also like toketivity events, and really finding my, team of people that are all working towards like a common goal of normalizing cannabis consumption for whatever reason. So that was really liberating to know that like there were so many women, especially like behind me. And being a woman and having a business is like obviously really empowering, and being able to, employ other women is really wonderful. And I feel fortunate that my business has been enabled me to do that. I definitely steer away from like the kind of like weed bro culture. There is a lot of that in cannabis, and again, I'm super fortunate that I don't have to work with those people. When I very first started, I actually went to a few like head shops to try to like, sell my show them the product and get them. And, I met with these dudes that just like didn't get it in terms of like, they were just like, oh, the bowl's too small. Like that was their feedback about my pieces. And I was like, okay, like fine, like I don't need to sell to you, like you clearly don't understand like who this product is for. Like I'm not trying to sell to somebody that needs to take like a full gram hit every time they like smoke a bowl. So that's been the main backlash, but for the most part I've been able to like select my clientele, and my clientele has like found me. I don't want to exclude, like my product isn't gender specific, but like I really find myself like always wanting to empower and enable women to like say like, yeah, I smoke weed and I do it out of beautiful things and I'm not ashamed, and like it's not, something that I need to hide my pipe. That's like a huge part of it, like, and why I started the business in the first place was like I've smoked weed since college and never identified with Rasta culture or hippie, those are both fine, but like that's not my aesthetic. It's not how I decorate my apartment. It's not like what my vibe is. So like I want pieces that like could sit on my nice coffee table and still look like pretty. And so I feel like a lot of women especially like they can want the same thing, and there are men who care about that as well, and like that's why I don't like exclude, like I said, I don't want to exclude any gender, but like being a woman, I feel like I obviously identify more with the need in that marketplace.
Yeah, exactly. I get that when I'm like reflecting back on looking at your website and just like the colors that you use and just like the picks that you make, like they're just so elegant, and like I kind of thought of a wine opener, but at the same time it's just to clean out the pipe, but it's just so pretty. And like when I think of a pipe and like a pipe cleaner, I think of like the drug rug, like kind of like, yeah, dude, like weed, cannabis type of people. And this is like just such a different style. It's like something you would pick up at like a cute antique store and love to just leave it out on your table when you have guests over.
Totally. I mean, I always kind of likened it to, you know, like you can have like pint glasses in your cabinet for beer, but you can also have like really, really fancy like cocktail glasses and champagne flutes and like a whiskey cup, you know, like you can have beautiful objects for consuming different things, and like different people have different aesthetics for all of those things. So of course, why wouldn't there be like a fancy pipe too?
Yeah. And I see you're working with like retail partners. Like, how would you say is that process going? When I looked at your site, very open to working at retail, but as you mentioned earlier in the interview, you like working with your website, working for yourself, and funding yourself so you could do whatever you'd like with your product and your brand.
Yeah, I mean, working with retail partners, I do typical like kind of wholesale, like, you know, buying. They can do wholesale buying, but and that's definitely actually slowed down some due to COVID, because I don't have as much production help right now. So that's kind of been like giving me some pause to think about how I want to reformat my sales structure. But yeah, I mean, doing wholesale and working with retailers, like it makes, I want people who don't just find me on Instagram to be able to find my product, you know, so obviously having it in physical locations is helpful for people to be able to do that. So it's been great. And like, you know, it's tricky. I've had people from all over the world reach out to me wanting my work, and it's just like comes down to me being the only one to like figure out the systems of getting it to Japan or getting it to Australia. But yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to working with retailers in any way. It's just like, I just want to make sure that obviously their like kind of ideals line up with mine. But for the most part, if people are pro cannabis, it's usually a good fit.
Yeah, especially because your product is made for pro cannabis, and you're in such a great environment and state to process and just pretty much form a lot of your brand. And you're saying like the quarantine, I know a lot of people are taking this moment to sit back and just rebrand a lot of their products and try to figure out for what comes after quarantine. So how are you feeling about that during quarantine, and then your hopes for after quarantine for your brand?
I mean, I'm kind of like, I guess I'm chugging along in terms of just like keep moving forward with the systems I have. Well, some of the systems I have in place, like I said, because I don't have the help, I just can't produce at the same capacity that I was doing before quarantine. But that means that I've actually like just cut down on the wholesale and maybe doing more like one-of-a-kind pieces, which to me is actually like more fun than making the same thing over and over again. Because again, every single thing about every piece is hand done. The only machine that I use is my kiln to fire the pieces in. So like, even though they're the same over and over, each one is made over and over again, you know? So like me getting to make more one-of-a-kind pieces, and that way I'm actually able to, you know, charge a bit more for them as art pieces. So it kind of makes more sense to sell fewer at a higher price point than sell more at a lower price point sometimes. So I'm trying to figure that out, and we'll see what happens. But I also don't want to just make a blanket rule, just like I'm not going to do wholesale or something just yet, because I know, again, I want people in other places to be able to reach my product that I might not be able to reach just by myself.
Yeah. And what would you say when I hear you talk about reaching other people, wholesale, working for yourself, what would you say is the best part of building your brand?
I mean, the best part of building my brand is working for myself and be like, you know, it's a double-edged sword. It's both the best and the worst part is being self-employed, you know, really designing my day and my life and how I go about like, you know, my life really, and priorities. Yeah, I really do love doing like collaborations with brands or other artists, because like it enables me to create outside the standard, the standard line collection that I have, and like working with other creatives I love. I've gotten to work with a bunch of different artists and even like different bands and brands, and like it's just been it's neat to have a product or work that enables that level of collaboration.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm starting up my own business too with keychains, and everything you're just saying like resonates with me, and I'm just like trying to get in, because like this, I look up to you with your own brand and working from home and self-employed, and the way you say like you're one of a kind pieces, and just getting to work with other people and branching off of that is just so amazing. And like that definitely outweighs the bad times in a company or brand when you're building or you've been in it for a while and you just need like a really good day or something to keep moving you forward. Stonedware Company definitely sounds like your baby, and it's definitely well taken care of, and it definitely gives me so much insight into your brand on a different level, I would say. And
thanks.
I really enjoyed it.
It's definitely like a labor of love, like if anybody thinks that I just got here all of a sudden, they're very much mistaken. Like this was, like I said, started in 2015. So like I was definitely like in the right place at the right time with the right idea, but I also worked really fucking hard.
Yeah,
like
exactly,
like there are a lot of times where I had issues, like I've have a whole list of like horror stories of like, clients that didn't go well too. And like, obviously I'm not interested in sharing exactly what happened, but like, I've had my fair share of like legal battles, and I've had my fair share of like, entire kiln loads being destroyed and like messed up, or like shipping nightmares. And, there's a lot that can happen in a business, and I think like the perseverance to keep going is what like separates my business from a lot of other businesses, especially being in this like emerging market where I've seen over the past 5 years, I've seen so many businesses start and end pretty quick, like within a year, within 2 years, within 3 years. Like I feel kind of like a survivor, that I've just like kept going, marching forward, and like just keep going. So but again, like there's nothing else I'd rather be doing, which is kind of what I always come back to whenever I'm having one of those bad days, or I don't have, the answer. I feel like at the end of my rope, it's like, it is my baby, and like, I love it.
You say you started in 2015. Do you have an exact date for when you first launched?
Well, it's kind of interesting because this is actually my second business. In 2013, I started a ceramic home decor business, and I was working on that when I started making pipes, and then because I was doing both at the same time, and then I kind of branched off and started Stonedware. And I don't have like an exact date that I like, except for like when I filed for my LLC, kind of thing. But it was in February of 2015 is when like Stonedware became like an actual legal entity instead of just like a name that I used. But yeah, I kind of dissolved that business. I guess like by 2016, I was like, oh, Stonedware, that's the way to go. Because at the time there was a lot of people do ceramic home decor, and you're battling like IKEA as opposed to ceramic pipes. There was only like 2 other companies doing that. And now there's, I could probably name at least 10 to 15 other companies doing it, but still relatively few compared to like how many glass blowers there are. So
yeah, exactly, like less competition, but also such iconic and individual pieces, I feel, because as I'm taking into this internship with Emerald Media Group, I'm looking at so many different companies, and I look at your company, I was like, oh my god, this is so different, like I would have never known. without my internship, and I'm like, I'm glad I know about this website now. It's like so cool. And I was showing my mom, and she's like, a pipe? That's like, you know, when you talk to your mom, she's just like freaking out. A pipe? Oh my god. She's like, wait, I would literally put that on my table. And I think that's like what makes you so different from other brands. And like the thriving of your brand, I feel, is like because of your different items and the abstract pieces that just make it so easy to put it anywhere.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. My mom, like, I was raised in a really don't do drugs, weed is a drug, don't do drugs family. Even though they're super liberal and progressive, they just were not into cannabis as like medicine, or like even just like it's a drug. It was like I was raised, that's a drug, don't do drugs, you know. And so when I started really with Stonedware making pipes, I didn't tell my parents for a little while because I never shared that I smoked with them, even though I started in college. And like I've always been kind of more of like a smoker than a drinker kind of person. And but then finally I like had to tell that I'm pretty like I have a good relationship with my parents. So I was like, okay, I have to like, you know, step up and tell them what I'm doing. And it took them like a minute to like think about it. They weren't like immediately like mad or anything, but they definitely like took a little while. And then my dad sent me like a message being like, you know, I think that this is like actually really great. And your great grandfather, Morris, like, you know, he used to brew his own alcohol during Prohibition, and I hope that you are just as successful as he was. And I was like, thanks, Dad. You know, like just the comparison to like our family is kind of filled with people who have like skirted that line of like working in the industry that is told that it's like taboo. And now my parents couldn't be more proud. You know, they show all their friends any magazine article that Stonedware's in. They have like pipes on their mantle, like in their place. Like, you know, they love it. So I think that they've also, I've been able to educate them more on like, you know, different like health benefits of medical cannabis and CBD. And like they didn't have that education before, and they probably wouldn't have had it without me and the facilitation of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like for them it's different because a cannabis lifestyle was only directed in a negative lifestyle, and that's the only light it took. And now there's just so much when it comes to the cannabis production and lifestyle, and the way people are using it or not using it and promoting it. So I feel like there's so many different paths, and this is definitely essential to this brand of things. Thank you so much again, and I hope you have a great night.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good afternoon or evening, I guess. Yeah.